Welcome to the Fifth Trooper Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Fifth Trooper
There it
Podcast.
is.
My name is Jay Shalansky and this is Evan Bulris.
Hey, how's it going?
And on today's podcast, we're going to be talking about terrain for tabletop wargaming. So
Just in general, yeah.
yeah, that's exciting. Before we do that, though, I want to remind you that we have a Patreon, and we are going to start creating content. We already have a Legion-specific podcast that Evan and I started back up that we're doing on Patreon, and we're going to be doing a lot of other content. And if you can support us on Patreon, we'd really appreciate it. Like, even like $2 a month would really help us out so that we can keep doing great stuff like this, so we can afford all the things that it takes to run one of these gosh darn podcasts, right? And so if you can help us out with that, that would be great. Patreon.com/the Fifth Trooper. Like I said, even just the $2 level would be great to help support all the content that you love across the Fifth Trooper network. And yeah, so that'll be, I just thought I'd mention that real quick. What do you think?
Agree.
Okay.
Ditto.
Evan's in agreement. Yeah, so today, that was this week. Today, what I'd like to talk about with Evan is terrain. I'm looking at a piece of paper because we wrote down some ideas on this.
You're not looking at a teleprompter behind us? We're not teleprompter big yet?
No, not yet. So if you're listening to the audio, we're going to do our best to describe everything here today. But if you're on Podbean or on YouTube, you can watch the video and you can see what we're talking about. The only time I think listeners won't get the video is if they're on iTunes or Spotify or something like that, right? So if you're listening on the Podbean app or on YouTube, you can watch the video, which is fantastic. So where do we want to start, Evan?
Well, all right. So if you play any miniatures game, you've run into needing terrain.
Oh, yep.
You know, we've talked about this. This isn't the first time we talked about terrain. Most of it's been Legion based.
Yep.
But in general, like every game needs it. Well, I shouldn't say that. Every big miniature game generally needs it in some asset. X-Wing even has, like, you can consider terrain just like the tokens, the asteroid tokens you put down. But like,
yeah, Oak and Iron's got those cutouts, the islands and the stuff, you know.
And some people have done some really cool on the Oak and Iron thread, some really cool like 3D islands. Like they actually make islands. That's super cool.
Yeah, for real.
So it's every game, miniatures game, generally has some representation of terrain. The big ones we're into right now, like Wild West, bolt action. They want like full. If you Beasts of War have done like full tables, just like actual action. So terrain is something you can do if you want to spruce up your wargaming experience. And so we kind of just want to talk about what we do with ours, because we get some people asking about what we do with ours, and most of it is a lot of it's like either 3D printed or handmade. And you know, we've got a lot of representation of that here on the table today, or even just gotten from the company, which is a way to get it too.
Yeah, and so we'll point out all the different types that we have in front of us. So really, what's going to happen here today is we're going to talk about varying degrees of terrain, what makes terrain good, and then I actually have some quick tips that I'm going to talk about how I make terrain from scratch, and just some like hints. I got a couple pieces on the table that I'll talk through, and for those of you listening, I'll try to describe it the best I can. But you know, Evan, what defines good terrain?
So like if you go down to what I really want to see in a table, I painted my Legion guys to look like Tron, and I want to make a VR board. To me, the best terrain is just, it suits the game correctly. So like in a VR board, it'd just be like blocks and triangles and stuff that fits the gameplay. So both sides have an equal shot about that. That's what I like to see, like, or one of the old Metal Gear like VR missions, right, where it's just very like block like. To me, that's, in my mind's eye, that's my perfect terrain, because it's just easy to define. Both people understand what it does, how it works. It's easy to visualize where units are around it. That said, that's really boring if that's all you ever saw. So terrain to me is anything that really adds. A lot of games need it for cover rules, but actually makes it look like you're on a battlefield. That's why a lot of people like mats and things, 'cause it adds a little bit to it.
Yeah, I would say, I think for me, I generally don't, I mean, I know it has a purpose in the game, but I generally don't think about it or care too much about it from that perspective. For me, it's more about the immersion into the game and where I'm having the battlefield and just the appreciation for the hobby, right? Like, that's for me, for the wargaming, that's where the hobby aspect is, the enjoyment of the hobby aspect is for me is in the terrain, right? I like the miniatures. Sometimes though, I really struggle getting through the painting because I want them to be so.
Well, you get spoiled, right? Like, I mean, X-Wing is you open the box and you're done.
Yeah.
You put it on peg, it's pre-painted, and it looks pretty good, right? Like, Armada is like same thing. Like, you open it up, painted, even if it's just like gray, like highlighted and like, but it's that point where, right? Like, there's people like, oh, your army's all gray. I'm like, yeah, I just kind of want to play though. Like, I don't want to commit a ton of time to painting an army for a game I don't even know if I like yet, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's a tough,
because you can put a ton of commitment into that, but terrain is something you can put a ton of time into, and especially if it's like forest, like Jay's done here, a couple trees here for his Endor board. A lot of games can use that. Like, Marvel Crisis Protocol can use it. You're in a forest, you're fighting bolt action, you're fighting in a forest. Like, you can put a lot of time into that and get multiple uses out of it, instead of like painting up a good stormtrooper and then only ever using it in Legion.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's the nice thing about a lot of these miniature games that we play are in the same scale, roughly, for the most part, and so. And we'll talk about different companies that make terrain, but there's a couple companies out there that make a bunch of terrain that's good for multiple game systems, which is really nice. And I don't know if they initially intended it for that, but it turned out that it was. So that's good.
It's nice when you get to use your imagination a little bit too. That's kind of the joy of miniature games. It's just like, well, when I started my first game, that I actually, looking back, got really into was mech clicks, and that needed terrain. Like, it needed like line of sight blocking, or else it's just a gun line. But we had our school books, and we had like soup cans and things like that to be. And the soup can was like a oil silo when we're fighting over the oil silo. And back then, like, we were playing and we really had a good time with that. But then you start going into like hobby shops and you see like anything we've got laid out on the table here, and you're like, what? You can get that? That's like that's it blew my mind. I'm like, what have I been doing with these dumb, like, it made me embarrassed about our tables that we're really proud of. That was like, our history books, and like, well, the mech can climb up there if he's got jump jets, right? Like, there's a whole thing, so it really can add something to the game.
Yeah, and there's varying levels of companies out there that give you terrain at different like hobby levels too. I mean, and so like something like from Wild West Exodus, which we covered a couple of weeks ago in our Wild West Exodus, and I'm showing it to the camera, but they have MDF buildings that, for the most part, once you put them together, you don't have to paint them. Like, we were, Evan and I were looking at these going...
We're going back and forth quite a bit on that. We're
I
guess it's good, right?
Yeah. And so, and there's other companies that do MDF board-based terrain, and, you don't need to really touch it. It's good. It's kind of good to go the way the laser cutting works, right? It's got all the detail in there, and so it's kind of
Worst case, you spray paint it brown, and all the details are already there, and it's wood.
And you just move on with your life. Yeah. And then you have like 3D printed terrain that you would get either the digital file for and print at home, or you can order the printed buildings from companies. Now, some companies send them unpainted and untouched, just the gray or black or white, whatever plastic they're using. Now, some companies, like the ones I'm looking at right now, these are from a company called Legion Terrain, which is, they're very focused on Star Wars Legion, but they definitely have some stuff that you could use across platforms. They pride themselves in it's 3D printed, I think 80%, and then they paint it and it's all set. So you just order it and it's ready to go.
That's cool.
I guess you could get some unpainted, but why? You're going to pay the premium for the painted, just go do it. And there's other options out there, like we have a blown foam one too there, that little Tatooine hut. That I believe was like custom meeple or something like that. That it's just foam. They created a die, and then they just blew the foam in there, right? And
that's honestly really easy. There's like a ton of stuff you can even do from like if you go into any art store. I was using for when I started like trying to actually build terrain for. I had a resurgence in the mech clicks a few years ago with a bunch of my friends because it was you'd buy a crate. it wasn't just a box of boosters, but a whole like shipping container for like $100. So we all put in like 25, and we got like 30 booster packs of this game. So we're like, yeah, we're playing Mech Clicks because I had all my old stuff. So we started like really getting into it because the rules are pretty easy. And we're like, well, we need terrain now. If we're gonna spend $25, we need terrain. So we started going to art stores, and they actually had trees.
Yeah.
Right. You can just buy like trees. You can make your own, which is cool. But they had trees you could buy, and then they had like bricks you can make it broken. So we had like a ruined desert mat. So I took, before I even really knew about mats, I was buying like those things you did for like your school like science fair projects where you open them up.
Oh, the diorama.
Yeah, you can buy instead of them the folding, you just buy like the planks. And so I spray painted those with a textured spray paint, so it looked like dirt. But I didn't like understand that when they dry, they bend. Yeah. So if again, anything I've ever done with hobby, I've done it the wrong way. So if you ever want advice, I can tell you how not to do it. I can tell you how to do it.
Evan literally every time he tells a story, and since I've known him, everything he started, he's done it the wrong way first. But they're all good lessons to learn.
Yeah, honestly, like if a walrus will never learn anything the correct way. That's just but. So I spray painted those, and we put we all kind of took turns. Like we had a day where we just built terrain, which is a good way to get into a game. If people are like, hey, we all want to get into this, make a terrain day. Our local store does that once in a while, and we did that together. We had a night where we were all just drinking and building terrain out of these blocks, and we had some cool like structures built. So we all built terrain, and it gives you more ownership over the board. Yeah. And so we all like really liked it. Like those, it wasn't like, again, the stuff we have out in front of us is amazing compared to what I had, but from what we had, we were really proud of the little things we made, so we'd like want to use them on the board, and added a lot to it. Like even though it's not like amazing, it was good. So like even a little effort goes a long way. I mean, like honestly, when you look at your thing here, like excluding the trees and the little plastic, like what you did was you've got like foam, right? Yep. You carved up some foam and then you put flock on it and you painted it, right? Yep. I mean, again, excluding like.
And I'm gonna break these down at the end, but I mean that's that simple,
like,
right?
It wasn't that bad, right?
Right, and so actually, you know what? Let's talk about it now since you brought it up. Yeah. We'll get back to the other stuff, but
I didn't mean to side rail.
No,
like,
it's okay.
Like that little work. Again, there's a lot of work together, but like just carving it up, spray painting it, and then flocking is like, and that looks awesome.
Yeah.
Like,
so there's some easy stuff you can do. You can go to any hardware store. Listen, I'm talking from a viewpoint from the United States. Okay. Yeah. So if you're listening internationally, I hope this applies to you too, but I don't have enough knowledge to tell you one way or the other.
Or hardware or art supply.
Yeah.
Like those are kind of.
So what you do is you can get 2-inch foam. It's about an inch like and a half foam.
Pink. Right,
it's pink or green. Yep, and it's insulation foam, and it comes in 2 foot by 2 foot. So most Lowe's, Home Depot, these types of stores are doing. They're calling it hobby foam now, like they're onto it.
That's funny,
and it's because it's not just us. It's like there's a lot of people out there with like those crickets or
trains,
trains. And so you could get 2 foot by 2 foot. Roughly, or even I think it might be 4 foot by 4 foot.
Off screen, there's just a bunch of like
there's a bunch of
gingerbread cut up foam.
And so you could get that. That's like it's like $2 or $3, and so you get like a hot wire gun from Hobby Lobby or one of those hobby stores.
Are surprisingly affordable.
Yeah, or Amazon, like $30.
Yeah, not that bad.
So, or you could get like a knife and carve it. That's the hard way to do it with like a.
I can say I haven't cut myself yet. That's like so you said knife. I'm like, did I have all my fingers, so I'm okay.
Or even something like so. What I have here is you can order like plastic sheets off of Amazon, or you can get like cardboard sheets and then cut little shapes. Like so, if you look at the bottom of that, for everybody not looking, it's just a white. You can hear it. Mm-hmm. Plastic sheet that I cut with an X-Acto knife. Now here's the real tip. This is one of my favorite things. So let's say you're building a lot of terrain that has ground, okay? Like a lot of ground base, like I have trees
like
here.
Dirt.
Or you're building sand dunes or something like that. This is cheap, quick. So you can go to you can even get this stuff at Walmart, frankly. There's these basic acrylic paints. Okay, they come in like this is what a 4 ounce little squeeze bottle here. You can get them all kind of colors. So this is generally for painting, acrylic painting like on canvas. But you grab one of these bottles. Then what you can get is there's two types of medium you can get, and these are I've seen these at Walmart, and I've also they're any like Hobby Lobby or art store.
Okay.
I use the Liquitex and Basic Acrylics. That's the name of the brand. And so I get the paint. So this is a raw umber. So this is a brown, and that's what I made the dirt on the indoor table with. And then you get there's a coarse texture medium.
Okay.
And it's white-ish, right? It doesn't really have a pigment. So when you mix it with the brown, it tones it down a little bit, but not a lot. It has sand sort of material
like a grit.
already built in, like a grit. And it's like $9 for a big tube of it. And you mix it all together, and then you just cover the board with it. And now you have a brown texture.
Easy. Nice.
Done, right?
And there's a lot of it, so you can do a bunch of things off of it. It's not just like a one.
Yeah, so I make I make a big batch of it, so if I know I'm gonna be like, I did all the tree stuff for the indoor table, which we'll have photos, but if you're watching the video, I did it all together at once. So I just made a big bowl of it, and then after I prepped and was ready, I just slathered this stuff on. Okay, so that's what I put down first. Then you can get any type of flock or static grass. These big things like this are like $10, $12.
We sell them too.
Yeah, for a big on our website we have flock. This is Woodland Scenic Static Grass Flock. This is great. And you just get like what you can do is you can get flock glue if you want. There's special glue, or you want to know the cheap way? You take some Elmer's glue and you mix some water. And
I do Gorilla Glue.
Yeah.
I do Gorilla Wood Glue.
Wood glue.
Wood glue. And that's because it's like not super sticky. And honestly, for all my bases for all of my Wild West Exodus guys, I just took the base, Gorilla Glue, and I just dunked it in the flock. And I put a couple grass things on there. And I'm like,
it looks good.
Good enough, right?
But if you want to do it on the cheap, Elmer's glue and some water. And you go get like a $1 spray bottle.
$3.
Yeah, from the dollar store. Get the glue from the dollar store.
Yep.
Mix it, and you want it to be the liquid to be white, but liquidy, right? You don't want it to be thick
Runny,
like the glue. And then you spray that over what you just painted for your dirt, with the acrylic paint, and then you can either dip it like Evan does, or put it over like a paper plate, and then just shake the flock on there, and you're done. Now you have dirt and grass, and we'll have better video of this, but you can see, that's what it looks like. Then they also have, let's say you didn't want like a grit dirt, but you wanted more like, let's say you're doing sand dunes, or you want more like build up on the side of a mountain or something. They have modeling paste. Same company. It's an acrylic base, and what it does is it gives your paint like a thick texture, and then it'll dry that way, so you can do like textured.
I actually just bought from Just Games, which is one of our buyer mats there actually. One of our cool local stores. They do the shipping now because you can't go inside a whole lot. So Vallejo makes the paste, but for like $12 it's like dirt colored.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for that for I have the Wild Warriors, which are like the Native Americans in Wild West, and I'm like, well, I want to do all my bases different, it's kind of like an artist thing, I guess. I'm like, well, I did like the aliens have dead grass because the grass dies where they go, and the Union are green grass because they're from the north and it's green up there. Well, what about the Native Americans? Where do they come from? So I'm like, well, I was looking through their website, and then I'm like, that autumn leaves, like for the flock, you can just put like, I'm like, oh, that'd be cool, like an autumn, but then I'm like, well, no Battlefield's really like autumn,
right?
So I thought about actually our dirt mat, and I'm like, well, okay, here we go. And then I was buying a bunch. I got into Scythe recently. Which is again cool game, expensive. Recommend if you can try it on Steam before you jump into the main game. I love it, but anyway, and so they had Vallejo just makes like a jar of it was like $12 of just like dirt, like it's a pasty dirt. So you put it on the base and you kind of swirl it, kind of like the contrast tubes that Citadel does, except not contrast, technical tubes that Citadel does, but you get a ton of it for like way cheaper. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I guess I'll do that for $12. That sounds okay.
Yeah, and so there's many ways to do this, right? And then so if we'll put this, I'll show this one here.
You spruce that up with a little,
just as an example,
little scatter terrain too.
Yeah, so basically, I took the plastic, I put down the ground with the acrylic paint, put the flock on the top. So if you see and listening at home, basically there's like these ferns on here. So what I did, the trick with that was, it's hard to find like miniature ferns, right?
It is,
And they
yeah.
always jack the price up. So what I did was I went to Hobby Lobby, and they have the fake flower section.
Oh, yeah.
I bought a thing of ferns, fake ferns, and all the little leaves on it are just mini ferns. And so I just cut them off,
That's
and
a
I
galaxy brain move.
and I hot glued them. I hot glued them on there, right? And so I have these little ferns,
like the
and then
bits of fern. That's
yeah,
funny.
and then I have 3D printed little crates and stuff on here.
Yeah.
Now these big tree trunks that you see, like redwood forest for Endor, right?
Yeah.
So
These are funny. Yeah.
I was at the dollar store years ago. I forgot what I was getting, but in the kids section, and I think they still have this. I see it all the time, but they basically have like a ninja bow staff.
Yeah, like Ninja Turtles bow staff.
Yeah, for kids, and you get two pieces, and it's got a handle in the middle, and you kind of screw it together, and now it's like this bow staff that's maybe like 2 foot long. Okay.
Yeah.
They look like tree trunks. So I bought like $20 worth, which is 40 trees, because you cut the handle off.
I can just see you like walking up and ladies
Yeah,
like,
just big, like she's like,
having a
well,
party,
you
huh?
have a party, yeah, something like that. And then what I did was I hit them with some spray paint just to get a base on it.
Yeah.
I put a watered down like dark brown in there to create a wash.
Yeah.
And then I just dry brushed it, and there's your trees, right?
Good, yeah. Like Endor style, right? This
Yeah.
go to infinity. Yeah.
So then here's another trick for everyone at home. These other pine trees that I have on here. So these ones, and for you at home, you can try to watch the video if you're just listening. Basically, if you look at this, what I did was, you know those coconut baskets that like for flowers? Do you know what I'm
I
talking
think
about?
so,
Here,
yeah.
hold on.
Yeah.
Let me grab it real quick.
Oh,
Sorry,
all right.
everybody. I know this is like in the middle of the podcast.
No, it's fine. We're
Go ahead, Evan.
Jay's entering the deep state level of like just crafting material we have. But okay, yeah. So it's the yep.
So
I see what you're
these.
saying.
Okay, so you grab one of these. Sorry, get on camera there. So this is a coconut insert for plants.
Okay,
It
yep.
like holds the water. So what I do is I take this, okay? You basically get like a pair of scissors, like good kitchen scissors are nice, like ones you would get with like a knife set because they work well. You cut circles and then just pull it apart. And so each one of these layers
Just a
is a
ring.
circle. So I just made it from larger to smaller, right? And I glued them on a dowel. All this is a dowel
Yeah.
that I painted brown.
Nice.
Okay. And then I took that Elmer's glue water mixture, sprayed the whole thing, and then just shook some flock over the top. Just a different color than the ground. And it looks like a pine tree.
Done. Easy.
And done.
GG.
And those, you can find those coconut basket things at any like floral store, or
Yeah, they're
you can
cheap.
get them on Amazon.
they're real
They're
cheap.
real cheap, right? So that's another fun thing. I'll do one last one, and then we can.
Yeah. Go
Is that
for it.
okay?
Yeah. Keep
And
going, man. You're good.
So right now, what I'm showing is from the Endor collection. So there's this thing here that looks like a blanket, right? And it. I mean, what do you
tarp,
think?
yeah.
Tarp looks
Yeah. It
pretty
looks like
good,
a
right?
yep, like a camouflage tarp.
Yeah. So what I did was, I'll leave this up so everybody can see it. But what I did was I took a paper towel.
Okay.
Okay, I made 3 trees, so I have 2 of the Donatello bow staff trees. I have one custom tree that I made out of a
Yep.
dowel and the coconut basket, and I took some hobby string. So you can get this string at Walmart or anywhere else. It's like a brown craft string.
yeah.
I don't even know what you would call it, but it's in the craft section at Walmart, at any store really. And I tied that up to the tree, so it looked like, you know, they tied it off. I took a paper towel. I kind of tore it up so that it looked interesting, okay? And I took this stuff called Hodgepodge, which is basically, it's like a glue that makes things, you put it over like ceramics and stuff.
Okay.
And it gives it this kind of
it harden it?
gloss,
Okay.
and then it hardens.
Okay.
So
yeah,
you
yeah.
see, you feel that
Yeah.
it's hard. So I put it where I wanted it. I put the hodgepodge on it. Now it's going to make it wet, right? And you start manipulating it. The hodgepodge starts to dry and stiffens,
Okay.
And then what I did was I did a little dry brushing, a little wash, and some brown colors on it, and now I have a little tarp.
Yeah, it looks good actually. As looking at this, I'm like, oh my god, you used your what was the Vital Assets? No, wait, no, it wasn't Vital Assets. That's the second one.
The first one.
Yeah, the first one, the little boxes you got for this recover the supplies. You used the boxes on here, and I'm like, oh my god, my boxes.
So I had an extra set.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
And I already made so this from Star Wars Legion from people who don't know, and
I just had to like second take. I'm like, because I see the stuff we gave some out of Neo last year.
Yeah, those
So
were
I see
from,
those. I saw those. I'm like, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yeah, but I mean, really, when you're making terrain, as you can see, like everything I talked about there, it all seems random when you have it all separate, right? But then I put it all together into these really nice pieces.
Yeah.
And it was easy, and it's cheap, and it's straightforward, and it looks. If Evan's looking at it in person, and you guys can see it, on the stream here, or on the podcast video, but like it looks like I put a ton of work into this, and frankly, these were so quick. Like I banged these out in less than a weekend.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean? And so that's how you can do it from home. So now what I'd like to talk about is just talk about the different types of terrain and what to expect, like when you get stuff, right? So 3D printed versus if you're gonna buy stuff.
Yeah.
3D printed versus MDF versus foam. What's been your favorite?
So terrain? I'm gonna go down the list. So there's really three big categories for this.
Yep.
Handmade is always my favorite.
Okay.
Because even if it doesn't look as good as the other two, I appreciate the effort. It's kind of like if your kid gave you like a macaroni picture, where you're like, even if it's like real rough, you're like, oh, hey man, you really put a lot of effort into this.
Yep.
I appreciate that. Then the next is the MDF, because I like the wood. I like how much detail you can get into that in the laser cut. And then 3D printed is I don't dislike it. It's just the top three. 3D is my number 3. You can do a lot with it though. That's the thing. Like, like this is MDF, right? We've got this like giant wood building here.
Yep.
That you kind of see.
Pick that up if you want to show it.
Oh god. All right, here we go.
Rachel will kill you if you break it.
I know.
So Rachel put this one together and painted it. This was at Northeast Open.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible.
So
right?
this is from a company called Warsenal. Love these guys. They do a combo. It's a combo of MDF and plastic so that they can get some of those round pieces on there. But yeah, this thing's amazing.
I mean, this is like looks really clean and smooth. And I mean, 3D printers can get there, but I've always noticed
that next one is 3D if you want to show that. Yeah, there you go. That top comes off. So this is from our Jeddah City board.
And it looks really good, but I really like... So the nice thing about 3D, though, is you can do it not fast, but it's a lot of hands-off a little bit. Yeah. You can like have it print a building, and then it'll print it in sheets, and you just kind of put it together kind of thing. Yeah. And I appreciate the speed, and like, I mean, look at Legion Terrain. Like, they really nailed it, right?
Yeah,
like,
these guys, yeah.
They've got it down. So it's... I always like seeing it like that, because I like the hand-built part, because part of this is me is like... Let's say if this game didn't exist, I'd probably be building trains in a basement. Like, honestly, that's like the idea, right? Like, I like the artistry and like the craft that goes into it. Yeah. So I always like we have Jim Martin, right? He makes some like incredible, like his Marvel Crisis rooftop. Like he just handmade all that. That's insane.
So if you aren't part of the Legion community, Jim Martin is an amazing artist,
dude,
and
for real.
He did for Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Yeah.
He did their building that they had at Gen Con.
Yeah.
When they announced.
Yeah, and it was just rooftops.
Yeah, the rooftops board. He did that. He also, if you saw, there was a Scarif board floating around that was also at Disney Celebration.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He did the shuttle and the board and everything for that.
Rogue One.
Yeah, the Rogue One stuff. He's amazing, and we've had him on the podcast when we were doing just Legion, and he always talks about kind of combining like all the best of everything and doing like like taking the best of everything that you have. If you have a 3D printer, print some of the pieces in 3D. You know, if you have MDF, do some of it in MDF. And I think that's really a great way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like those are always that's how when I did my list, like that's my favorite when I see it, because it's like level. I'm not saying 3D doesn't have the same amount of work as going in the other two, but I just like seeing the handmade stuff. Like it's still part of the hobby to me. Is I really enjoy it. But then again, like I live in an area where we have a lot of people who really love making terrain, so like I kind of have the benefit of that. Like man, like Legion terrain, like I bought a bunch of their terrain just because it was easy and fast. They're like, do you want to paint them? I'm like, yes, please. I don't want to do that. Boop, right?
Yeah, and I'll lift this one up. So these guys do great work. This is the Renaissance City, as they call it. It's Naboo, right? But if you're playing, there's the fun thing about some of this stuff is like there's nothing specific about Star Wars in this, right?
Yeah.
So you could even do some it could just be a futuristic Italian city, right? And so Italian city. So you know, like I think Wild West Exodus potentially, like if they went to Europe, that would be something interesting.
Sure, yeah.
The nice thing about the building that he lifted up before, the MDF one from Warsenal, that building specifically, that's from their Infinity line. So they developed that all for Corvus Belli, right? Corvus.
Yep. Yeah. Right. Yep.
And Infinity, and like it works perfect for Legion though, right?
Yeah,
it's
like
that same kind of feel.
It's I mean, you're just the nice thing about Star Wars is you could do anything, right? You could have a Wild West city, and you're just on a planet that hasn't got off the planet yet, right? Like that's the nice thing about Star Wars. Whereas other games where they like Wild West is pretty good because it's steampunk, so you can kind of get away a lot. But if you're playing like bolt action, you may not want like a ruined sci-fi tank as your terrain. But so then again, I mean, we're kind of jumping all around. We have like a little list of how we want to talk today, but like you want to build terrain. So my level of like, what do I build? Where do I start? So I think generic as possible, and then you start trying to filter down to specific like games. Like if you just play Bolt Action or Flames of War, you know what you're building. You're building like European hillsides and beaches and deserts and right. Like you're not going to be building. You're not going to take a ATST, smash it, and then put the parts. Like you're not going to buy the down to ATST and put it on your field and be like, yeah, that looks fine, right? But like trees, like this board here, could be pretty much anything, right? You're in the redwoods, you know, like it's like it just
like that's that's a cross-platform existence.
I think the more terrain you can get from that, where it's just like forest or desert or generic, will help you play more games. Just because it's easier to put on the table and you don't have to like be specific about something. I mean, like these have little Star Wars logos on them, but they could just be boxes. They don't have to be anything particular. Like, I think when you're looking to build, like, where do I start? Build is like generic. Build like a hill. Start with like hills, because you need line of sight blocking in just about every game.
Right. I was gonna say like there's cover, line of sight blocking. Are pretty key to every game, right? So I don't think there's any game where that doesn't matter. So
you want like that, and then you kind of filter down to like specifics. Like I know Warlord makes a ton of. You can buy ruined buildings. You can make a ruined village right off their site. You buy the Brother in Arms core set, and that's 2 sides plus a ruined area, and then you can buy more buildings, and then like I've got that, so I can make a ruined hamlet that you're fighting in. Like, cool, done, easy. Like you don't even have to like you spray it gray, you put white where the plaster is, done, right? Like just in a ruined area, right? Like it's not too bad.
And I think just thinking about it, like Evan said, like can I insert how many games can I insert this in where it's and this is something,
especially if you're like us who just play a lot of stuff,
right? And this is something that we take to heart. So if you don't know, we design 6x4 mats and we have 3x3 mats coming. But when I'm designing a mat, like I try to think about, okay, can I play? Does this work for 40K? Yep. Does this work for Legion? Yep. Does this work for Bolt Action? Yep. Does it work for Wild West Exodus now? Yep. Like there's some universal things,
like tropes,
because
almost,
because we're human, right? So we base everything off of our knowledge.
Like grass,
snow, desert. You know,
like nothing we have is specifically like you don't see like ATSD footprints. It's just like you could use this for anything.
Even like, so we have a city and an industrial, but they could be any
it's
city.
Like
it could be any industrial part, like anything that anything that's kind of sci-fi. And or even modern, you could use the industrial mat for, right?
I agree.
So it's just like there's nothing specific in there that locks you out of.
And that's like, again, that's a lot of what you're when you're buying a mat. So we'll talk about mats. I mean,
Okay.
because that goes
We're
into
biased here because
yeah, I know,
we
right?
make them
So
and sell them.
we are biased. But when you're buying a mat, whether you're looking at ours or any of our other competitors,
Yep.
there's a million now. Try to find one that if you already built terrain, try to match because that'll save you a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like honestly, and then B, try to find one that's generic when you're looking at it that you're gonna want to play on a lot. Like for example, like roads are pretty good because city fighting is pretty big in a lot of games. Like maybe like as much as I like snow, like I like Hoth. Not a secret that I like Hoth armies a lot.
Yep.
If I didn't, I myself wouldn't buy a desert mat because I don't theme my armies that way, and I just don't find desert fighting exciting to me. But like snow fighting is really cool because like the movies, right? Like I want to recreate those cool movie scenes. So like when you're buying a mat, try to find one you're gonna want to use. X-wing is easy because just star mat. You're like, yeah, stars.
Yeah, and I think and try to find one like the desert's a perfect example, right? Like I can't think of a game that doesn't fight in the desert.
Yeah, as much as not my favorite place, like everything has a desert. Like World War II, we fought in Africa.
Right. Wild West.
Wild West here in the desert.
Right.
Look at Star Wars. You're on Tatooine. Like
Yep.
there's
Or Jeddah now, or
Jeddah. Yeah, you
or-
could have a cool there's even factions in Infinity that are specifically from like a desert area. Like
Right.
you can. There's as much as I just griped about desert. Desert is like the one that can fit the most, right? Because you can just because even like we used to do roads, we'd have like you can buy rollout like roads that are
Yep.
just that. So you make desert, you put roads on it. Now you're just in like Arizona. If you're playing like Team Yankee or something, right? Like it doesn't like Team Yankee is just like okay, you're fighting in downtown Arizona or Texas.
Right.
Or
If
something.
you're in Wild West Exodus, you're in Red Oak, right?
Yeah,
Because
it
it's in a
doesn't-
desert,
yeah,
so
yeah.
it's a desert. It's a west desert town. So yeah. But yeah, trying to like if you're limited on funds and you're trying to invest in something that'll go across multiple platforms, I think you want to build your own. You want to stick to as much as you can natural landmarks, right? Stone, trees,
Yeah,
like
because mats aren't cheap, right? Like
Yeah.
we know. Like again, like when I have X-wing mats, like too many X-wing mats because X-wing mats are just not that expensive. I'm like 40, that's not bad. So now I've got like I use one my favorite, and I've got a pile of others I could use. If my car ever broke down in the winter, I've got all these blankets I could just sleep under. But they're an investment, and every time I buy anything that's not for a piece for the game, I'm thinking like, well, I just spent X amount of money on this, and I'm not gonna. It's not like it doesn't give me a new unit or new upgrade, or it's not like a new alien or something to use for my units, right? Like it's not a game piece, but it really does add to it. So it's just make sure you like when you really look at it, like look around because there's a million grass mats. I mean, before we started making our grass mats, my favorite was the FFG 3x3. But the problem is I needed two if I want to do anything with it. And I'm like, I don't want to spend $80 on the two 3x3s, and I got to cart these around, right? So it's like just be sure you want it because when you roll it out that first time though, it's gonna be awesome. Like wow, this looks all right. Here we go, right?
Yeah, and I, depending, Evan said to buy something that matches what you have already. Well, if you don't have any terrain already,
Perfect.
buy the mat first.
Yeah,
and
there
then
you go.
build it to the terrain, right?
Jiggity jackpot.
Yeah. Because there's just, there's just so much out there that you like now that we have been introducing new games into our gaming diet here. The more we are seeing this and realizing that thankfully a lot of the terrain we had
Kind of fits in one way or another,
and can be used across multiple types of war zones, right? And so so I was kind of gonna let's see. The other thing I would look at too is I know a lot of people like this happened a lot in Star Wars Legion and other games, I assume, is that you're just in it for that one game. Like you just like Star Wars or you just like Cowboys or, for Wild West Exodus
especially,
or whatever.
Man, the dream group for me is everybody just buys in one game hard. And then when people come over to play, you all just share. Right? Like that's the dream. That's never happened, but that's my like...
So like one of my tips for that is, and it's not always easy, but either find a company like, for instance, War Cradle, who they build the terrain, they design and make terrain for their own games, Or, if you're going to go with, like, let's say Infinity, find a company like Warsenal or Custom Meeple or one of those guys that makes terrain specifically for that game, and then just get a table.
Yeah.
If you can afford it, I know, or make a table, but just, if you buy terrain from a company or a company that's specifically designing, like, so for Star Wars Legion, I recommend Legion Terrain. They're really good. Another one, Imperial Terrain, is really good. But like, it depends on where you're at. Like, if you don't want to paint and you don't want to put any work in, find a company that like Legion Terrain who
just
print
piecemeal.
and paints it and puts it all together for you. Or find a company that does MDF terrain, because with all the detail that the laser can do, you don't even have to paint it. You can just put it on the table and it's ready to go.
It's one awesome table is better than 2 or 3 not great tables.
Agreed, 100%.
I would rather have one dope table that we just keep playing on and we can mix it up over and over again than like half a table and then you have to like sub in, like, I mean, I've played on so many for Legion and I've had some really bad times. Right? Like, because the game needs it so bad.
Yeah, we've designed tables that are really bad. And it's funny you said that, because I was looking at my Millennium
Yes.
Falcon over there.
I thought about it. I'm like, well.
And I was going to say this is the other thing you're going to want to decide. And I know this is tough. And this just kind of like a recommendation, right? Are you going to be hardcore and are you going to play competitive? Okay, or is this more of just for fun? Yeah,
So I get a
don't
visual
forget
here.
your headset. Or is this more for fun? Because what's going to happen is if it's just for fun, you can create these amazing centerpiece pieces, which Evan's about to show you. He's flying it, but this Millennium Falcon is pretty much to scale for Legion, and so it is giant, and it makes no sense for a competitive.
It's real obnoxious to play on.
For a competitive game, right? But for that centerpiece where it's just you and your buddies and you have your friends over on the weekend, this is a great piece, right? So I think you got to kind of decide, if I'm going to have this piece in for fun, like the Millennium Falcon here, do I then design something that replaces that when I'm playing competitively so that I can do competitive, or am I only concerned about playing for fun? And if you're only concerned about playing for fun and you're enjoying the hobby, then I go 100% in, take that Falcon, maybe create the interior or whatever you got to do. But always be thinking about, okay, I'm going to play competitively. I may bring this table somewhere. Is this conducive for competitive play?
Yeah, and that's rough because I honestly think if you want to build competitive terrain, go to a bunch of tournaments or actually look at TTS and look at what they have there on the tournament tables and try to emulate that, because there's actually like our buddy Nick will say like there's a science to it, almost like an art to make terrain and to make it competitive and good. There's like an art you need to hit like for the perfect table. Because if you have too much terrain, then different factions suffer and some really excel, and if you have no terrain, I can attest to like you just get blown off the table.
Yeah, and different units suffer.
Yeah.
So you may have like a really busy, like that's one of the toughest things, and that we've learned over a couple of years now of playing competitively, Legion anyways, and being very into the community, is how to build a table. So generally what I do is when I'm buying a table or when I'm putting a table together, I'll always do more than what I know I need, because then it gives me options, right? And so, like, for instance, Wild West Exodus, like, I bought enough to do a 6x4 and some.
Yeah.
And then Evan was like, yo, dog, we're only playing on 3x3. I'm like, yeah, but still, like, I'd rather have it all and then we can switch it out. So
the spin is, we could just do 2 3x3s next to each other. Like that's
or just have the whole town and just mark off a 3x3 area and just play in that, right? And so, I think we're wrapping up here, but I think it's just something to, before you go out and just start buying, just take a moment, maybe ask some people, just take a second, think about what your long-term goals are going to be.
Yeah.
And then you can make something that fits those goals, and then there's no remorse, right?
Yeah, because you can we've built terrain where we just never use. We're like, I hate that thing.
Yeah, I mean, so here in the studio, you can kind of see it on Evan's left side there, but like we have like 3 or 4 shelves of terrain, and this is just the good stuff that I left out, right? That's usable. I probably have 2 or 3 totes of stuff that's just not usable, right? And so because I thought it was cool, and I was like, gimme, and then I was like, oh snap, this isn't that good.
Also, our buddies at Legion Academy and Legion Terrain Studio, he does a ton. That's like his thing, right? Like,
Sean, yeah.
Sean does a ton of good stuff. With that, and he makes some good, cool tutorials about making that too.
Yeah, and Terrain Studio is really good with that. And like Sean takes it to, he takes it to like
he goes hard.
Yeah, his stuff is beautiful, and but like that's another option too. Is if let's say you have a bunch of income, you know, that expendable income, but you don't have a ton of time. You can go to a guy like Sean Morris from Train Studio, or you could go to Jim Martin and you can get custom tables made, you know. But so at each level, right, there's a dollar buy-in.
Yeah.
So like at this level where I'm making my own stuff here,
maybe you made all that for like $50.
Let's say 100 just to be safe, okay?
Because there's also. We don't see there's a ton of trees up there.
Yeah,
too.
there's
It's not just those 2
there's
pieces,
a ton
like
of stuff. So
the whole table.
Let's say a 6x4 forest table costs me, and I'm excluding like I put some. So this is a Star Wars specific table, but so I put like a broken ATST in there.
Yeah,
like
pull
so
the
I'm
pieces
not
out,
I'm not counting that stuff. But yeah, about $100. Okay, so you could reasonably get a table done for $100. Even if you're building buildings, you can get that board, the poster. Shoot, the word just dropped out of my head. It's like the foam board, foam core.
Okay.
You could get foam core board, and you can cut and build your own buildings,
Yep.
right? And you could do that for $100 or less. So that's your first way. Your next one is probably MDF. That would be the next cheapest.
Yeah.
And you're looking at probably $200 to $300 for a table. The next is 3D printed. We'll say
painted.
We'll say painted.
Yeah, we'll assume painted. Yeah.
Assume painted. You're looking at anywhere between $600 to $1,000.
Yep.
And then as you add more stuff, but then if you go to someone like Sean or Jim, you're looking at $5,000 to $10,000.
Yeah, and it's it seems insane, but for the level the amount of their time.
Yeah,
right? Like it's an artist's time is very valuable.
Well, yeah, and you got to value your own time, right? So what you're paying for is, I know 5 to 10 sounds like a lot, but you're paying not to do it.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, you know what I mean? That's what you're paying for. You're paying not to have to do it and to have a beautiful table.
Like exquisite.
Yeah.
Like his docking bay was nuts.
Right. Like so think about other things you would spend $5,000 to $10,000 on recreationally.
Over a period of time.
Over a period of time, right? So if you could get a board from one of these guys that design boards, this thing's going to last you years and years and years.
Yeah,
so don't look at the initial price tag. Look at the, long term.
But no, there's so much cool stuff out there. And honestly, I've been
so much.
Dude, it's kind of overwhelming. And I've been trying to make my own. Honestly, a good way to start, we'll go back to Legion here. Like, just decorate your barricades, man.
Yeah,
that's a real easy way to do it. I did that for my Hoth board. I was just giving them out to people at the end of games. My goal now that that one objective's out,
the barricade
fortified defenses, my dream would be everybody makes 8 of their own, and then after a game, if you both play it, you just trade one, so you have 8 different barricades.
That'd
you
be
got
fun.
like traded out because you get 8 with the game, right? So it'd be cool to have like a neat like.
It's almost like those old Boy Scout camps that you used to go to, where you'd bring a bunch of stuff to trade.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
like,
and
like pins and
barricades.
patches.
So you're just like here's my Hoth. Oh, here's my
if
Tatooine
we could get
barricade.
everyone to do that, that'd be
really
amazing.
neat, right? And you can sign them. So you're like, oh, that's from it was like tournament mementos, but didn't cost you.
Right,
like,
that's when I played Evan at Gen Con.
Yeah, like that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
So that's my dream. But like you could even do that with anything. But,
there you go. Get it started, everybody.
But like really start simple, start basic. Go to art stores, buy the foam, make hills, and that's honestly how I got going. Was just like real rough terrain. But you kind of gain when you make your own board and it's good. And with the first time you have a buddy come over, and go, wow, that's awesome. Like you go from like, man, I put a lot of time into this to go, oh yeah.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, right. Like it's I remember I was at Adepticon and I painted. It was the first time I actually painted a full army. And then I had someone walked up and this guy's like, "Oh, Chewie, that looks great." And I'm like, "Yeah." To me, I'm like, "Yeah, it was okay." And he's like, "This guy's trying to buy it off me." Which again, this is not a buy Chewie. This was like, They just wanted a model.
This was an Evan Chewy.
Yeah, this was an Evan Chewy, but I'm like, hey man, like A, I'm in the middle of a game. B, get out of here, right? Like I'm like, cool, but also it was like kind of nice to have someone be like, hey man, like that looks good enough to like, to want. So,
it's always good to have affirmation, right?
Yeah, just like somebody coming over and be like, hey man, that looks good. So like that helps a lot, and that gives you some more confidence when you're building more.
Yeah, so that's I think that's it for today's episode on terrain. If you guys have any questions about what we talked about, shoot us an email at contact@the5thtrooper or hit us up on our Facebook page, and generally I answer those, so I'll answer you.
I watch to make sure he answers now too.
That's great. All right, everybody, thank you so much, and join us next week.
Everyone, stay rad.
Join us next week for another edition of the 5th Trooper Podcast.
This has been a 5th Trooper production.